There was a moment, I think, when I was sort of thinking about um the, arts in a sort of like broader way, I think, but then also all of that has sort of fed back into, um all the sort of storytelling and all of that, it was definitely always the area.
That's amazing. I mean, so it sounds like composition was just a really natural progression for you as you kind of spent time practicing your instruments and kind of it ended up there, I guess, through university. Composition was when it started to really
Yeah.
be a part.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, it really sort of took off then. But also I was quite a kind of serious piano player, like pianist. Um and so I was but composition, it was because when I was doing my undergrad, it's quite the composition, I was studying a lot of kind of orchestration and composition, but also you kind of learn, one of the sort of things we had to do was kind of learn how to write in the style of Bach, or in the style, you had to learn how to write a fugue. And so it was really sort of academic in that way, which was amazing because that really kind of tuned my ear into kind of what I um how to write almost blindly in a way, but also how to sort of really access those, if I'm in a kind of Bach kind of mood, or if I feel like I need a sort of Bach influence in a score, I know which kind of chords and stuff to go to. So yeah, all of that stuff really helped, I guess. But yeah, it was composition. It was just always composition. I don't really it's like,
That's
I was
great.
just always writing.
No, I mean that it definitely comes across that the classical, I guess, the classical
Mm,
training and study really influenced your style and kind of shaped your style to then maybe later kind of broaden out into the soundscapes and things. But
mm,
initially, classical
yeah.
was your influence, would you say?
Totally,
Yeah.
totally. Oh my God, definitely. And it really, because like the composers that I would, that I was totally drawn to were the kind of late romantic composers, really in the beginning, and that was probably sort of just the sort, maybe in the sort of, maybe it was when I was about 18 or something. I was playing a lot of Rachmaninoff on the piano.
Fantastic.
you know all of that kind of emotional sort of angst stuff.
Yes.
I was like really really and and then so I was really wanting to write that kind of music and big kind of sound kind of things.
Mm,
So it really did. And then it was when I got more interested in the atonal stuff that everything kind of shrank and became much more either about spectral
mm,
music and much more kind of refined, I think. And then I became interested in experimenting with things. Like one of part of my portfolio, which actually I wrote a piece for a trombone and a light switch, and I was really like interested in like non things that weren't music, as it were. It was kind of more about the what happens when you take all the music away.
mm. Yes.
So yeah,
No,
it's kind of
I completely
a
get that.
journey.
It's wonderful.
But it was, I think, the classical things, they'll be in me forever because they were my first loves. But then then as the kind of more sort of experimental stuff and the sound design came in, it was actually very freeing because
Mm, of course.
sometimes it was the same thing. Like when I started to play in bands, I found that so freeing, um, because I'd been so locked weirdly by a kind of classical training that I couldn't really move. Um, so yeah, but you just go to the places that you feel like you want to, that you need to kind of stretch.
It's it it's exactly that. I think like I absolutely love classical music, and I know that you're a fan of Mahler, which I was listening to his first symphony this morning. But it is classical music has that almost unspoken rules that you do have to follow for it to
Mm.
work, whereas playing music when you take away the music, it opens up this world that I think is maybe through classical training isn't straight away apparent to what you can do,
Mm.
you know?
Yeah, it's so thrilling. Honestly, it was that. I think that's what made me feel more. Um, serious, I suppose, about writing music, because it really triggered something really positive. Kind of feeling that just because, when I discovered that it can be musical without being melodic, that was such a big revelation to me. And I really found that throwing out all the rules, and I suppose that's why tonal music always feels, I felt like a bit of a rebel, in the same way that my kind of, all the other people that were sort of studying at the same time as me, we did, kind of feel a bit punky about it. And then I was in an experimental band when I was doing my master's, and our whole principle was a rejection of all the sort of classical ways. That the band was, the way we played, it was completely based on improvising, so we never wrote anything down, which was sort of either kind of, it was probably maybe more fun for us than it was for an audience.
I'm sure.
But it was no, but it was like it was such an exciting way to work, and it was really freeing. And I'm not rejecting. I think the classical training really gave me such a strong foundation in terms of being able to understand the roots of everything, and then to kind of break it all apart.
Yes. No. So with that band, were you playing keys or piano of some sort?
Piano, but I didn't really ever play the actual piano. I was like either inside the piano, or like throwing things in the piano, or like beating the strings with mallets and stuff. And yeah, it was just sort of piano kind of sounds.
What was your favorite piano sound that you discovered?
Well, I remember I'd prepare the piano loads, we'd experiment a lot in these kind of sort of like rehearsals that we'd have. We'd kind of put different things, and I'd put different things in the piano. And I think things that I really liked were a kind of mixture of anything from kind of blue tack sounds to ping pong balls, to anything that creates a kind of random rhythm was quite exciting, especially in kind of an improvisatory sort of way. Like, you could play something and maybe a ping pong ball would go, or a chain that you've got on the piano, and then we had a cellist and a trumpet and live electronics, and then it would create an exciting opportunity for people to kind of respond to it. So things like that. But that mainly was important in that band, because it really taught me how to listen, I think, and respond kind of instinctively, rather than kind of overthinking everything.
Of course, and playing with,
which I tend to,
like collectively, I think sometimes that experience is so overlooked, because you hear someone do a particular inflection and you kind of embody that in what you're doing, and it becomes a much more corporate, and in some way, maybe I'm speaking out of turn, but rewarding experience, because you're hearing this kind of music combining different ideas.
Yeah, definitely.
So
yeah.
Sorry, continue.
No, I was only going to totally agree with you. I was going to say that, like, playing, it was, because that's the other thing about when you're a pianist, you kind of are a bit of a sort of lone sort of person. You can obviously, you can play in piano trios, and I mean there are lots of opportunities to play with people, but it's sort of not quite the same as playing a stringed instrument or something. So when I did start to play with people, I really found it was the most eye-opening, kind of, definitely rewarding, definitely I learned so much. Of course, so good.
I'm presuming playing piano recitals, part of the degree, that it's a very solo experience.
Totally, which prepared me really well for being a composer.
Yeah,
it's also a very solo experience, but I also liked it. I think it's sort of, you kind of want to be able to do both, I suppose. But I do, the recitals I really enjoyed as well. So different, like totally different kind of brains.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that kind of, bringing onto the composition side and the classical training, seeing Fleabag, you hear it, it's amazing. I mean, it's such a fantastic show, and I think I would love to know, I mean, of course it's your sister's creation, I want to ask how you became involved, if it was a conversation over a cup of tea, or how did it come about that you were going to bring the music in?
Well, because the amazing thing, my favorite thing, I think probably about Fleabag was that it began as a sort of like written on the back of a kind of packet of crisps kind of thing about 12 years ago, honestly, like, and it began as a play that we took to Edinburgh. And I think around that time when my sister wrote like the first, she wrote like a scene or something for, you know, for just for a friend's night that she was going to kind of perform. And then Francesca Moody, who's this amazing theatre producer, she was, you know, she's like a really good friend, and we were all good friends then too. And she said, well, look, I think we should just take it to Edinburgh. And then we all went into a panic, you know, then okay, I was sort of like doing bits and pieces, you know, I was doing like really basic bits and pieces for other plays that we were putting on in pubs, and doing bits of performances. So it was just like, okay, yeah, sure, I'll just give you some sounds, whatever, do some music for that. And then it was, there are so many wonderful photos of us on the train, just our small crew, like on the train up to Edinburgh, me like on a laptop, like making the stuff as we're going up, and it was so great. And then that's sort of how it happened. And then when it got picked up, at Edinburgh, and it got picked up for a series, and we just sort of we just sort of went, okay, cool, like let's have a go. And then yeah, it was all very quite surreal in a way, because it was just, honestly, it was just this tiny thing. And the nice thing about it as well is that as we've gone through the whole journey of it, the same people, it's just been the same people all the way. So it's kind of, that's really special. It's like, you know, when you keep the band together, it's like
Yes, that's
feels really nice.
that's such an incredible journey to be a part of, and that, yeah, the band is still together in that
Yeah.
creation. I mean, you can tell the different tones between season 1 and season 2, both within the narrative, but I think your score is fantastic. Like, you really capture the difference between the two of them. I mean, season 1 we have that more, I mean, I have those moments where it's like noir jazz in like those
Yeah.
bass lines. And then in the season 2, I mean, that choir is iconic. But how did you come to those kind of creative decisions in terms of the music? Was it really driven by the narrative? Or yeah, how did it work?
Yeah, definitely, really, always really driven by the narrative. I think we knew that in series 1 there sort of wasn't going to be that much music. There was like definitely, because it was so taken from the play, and it was written, I don't know, it just, there was so much rhythm in the writing, and it was so fast that that's why the kind of one of the, apart from the theme, the like longest, you know, not longest, I mean, I'm obviously really exaggerating, but there's that 2-second piece of music right at the beginning, which was a really fun thing to create, because it was just literally, it could only, I think it was like 2.4 seconds or something. And it was like the music they were just like little shots, like little injections, rather than, which I think really, I think to support the energy. Apart from, you know, we did like make a choice of the kind of like there would be like an anxious sort of triangle, you know, like ticking away, or like, yeah, some just like kind of solo instruments. But also in the play we used a lot of music, so that kind of like, you know, like lift music or whatever, like piped kind of music, sort of quite officey. And I don't know, yeah. And then when we got to series 1, the jazz thing just, or that we sort of ended up calling it kind of scrunk, because we didn't know really kind of what it was, and we were like putting pieces on top of each other just to sort of try and find something that was going to be kind of sound a bit different. And then the theme, which was the biggest thing to kind of get right, which was really fun to find, that kind of electric guitar, that thing. But then I think you can really tell, yeah, when we got to series 2, that we'd all kind of grown up a bit. You know, definitely the score was more mature, but that was not really about me at all. I mean, you know, it was more about the fact that the character had, and we went through a big journey of experimenting with the age of the singers, because we knew it was going to be vocal music, but then I'd recorded all of this music sung by adults, and we put it on and it was sort of thematic, and we sort of done it, and I'd given it to Gary Dolner, who's the editor, he's amazing, and he's a real he's just phenomenal. He's a real partner in terms of the way the music works in Fleabag, because I would sort of give him the pieces and he would cut them, in, and sort of like those really hard cuts out, so much of that was Gary. And anyway, so we were recording the adults, and then we put it on the series, on the episode 1, and it kind of didn't work at all, and we were so confused because we put it on episode 4 and it had been like great, it's like we'd really found it, and that was quite worrying, because suddenly it was like, oh, why doesn't it? And then I thought, well, maybe it's because the voices are too mature, like we've just suddenly, we've gone away and we've come back, and she's sort of, we're suddenly in this like very full-bodied kind of adult sound, which doesn't kind of really fit with the journey of the character. It's her like kind of coming of age. And so we then replaced those voices. I had them sung by boys, and some sopranos kind of in there as well. And then as she goes on her journey, her sort of coming of age, or her kind of, she matures, as do the voices throughout the series. So it's kind of, and then we end finally with only adults, which that and then that we were like, okay, that's fine. That works.
That's amazing. I mean, it's such an interesting take, and I feel like it creates almost this tone of, I want to say, these old tragedies in a way, but of course Fleabag is a comedy, but it displays that kind of, that dark humor so well with that choral input, That's fantastic.
Yeah, I think there is always like, I definitely I have quite a kind of Greek approach to work. I think, to making work. I think we've always sort of said I go Greek or go home, really, basically.
Great.
Like, which I actually really believe, and so and that can be either, it doesn't have to mean go massive, it can just be bold, I guess. And yeah, I'm glad it comes through the kind of, because I think with high drama, when you put something that feels very kind of, music wise very high drama on somebody, I mean, I just do it in, listening to Spotify or whatever, I'm just walking down the street, and suddenly like somebody if you put on a like really insane bit of classical music and watch someone just get something out of the bin or something,
yes.
It suddenly becomes amazing.
I remember
so I think, yeah, those contrast things.
Definitely. I mean, you stick on Zadok, the priest, when you're boiling your cup of tea, that makes a whole different.
Oh my God, it's incredible. It never fails to sort of cheer me up, doing little stuff, little tricks like that.
Amazing. I mean, the bit you've probably been asked this many times, but working with a family member, we all have different family dynamics. Some are wonderful, some aren't so wonderful. How did that, was it smooth? Was it easy? Was it actually better? Because when you work on a project, you're getting to know the people that you work with, but actually working with your sister, that partnership was already there. Like, was it as enjoyable as it, produced, whatever happened?
Yeah, I actually think it was. It kind of, what the really wonderful thing is that because we've obviously like known each other for such a long time, and we're so close, that the process, or the approach anyway, to kind of making any kind of work together isn't different from the way we'd approach, the way I'd approach, making work with kind of other collaborators. But we do have this kind of really satisfying kind of shorthand that does make everything, you can kind of skip sort of stages. I mean, definitely you can skip the kind of getting to know you phase that you have to do with the people. But I suppose we're just, we have such a similar sense of humor, and sometimes we really can communicate with just like the raise of an eyebrow or like something like that, and then so it does make things quite fast, which is really which is really great, I think. And then you and sort of like there is a sort of telepathy about it that is also kind of fun. But then also I think it's working with people, especially with writing music, you have to sort of in a really with other people, I mean like other collaborators, you have to kind of get to know them as quickly as you can in quite a short space of time. Really get to know that, and not only to know what their vision is for their, you know, for the film or for the whatever the piece of work is, but also just to sort of know what their tastes are, and you know, you know, anything really, just to sort of chat. And you have to kind of reach a sort of an intimacy that will serve the, you know,
Yes.
that feeds back into the project in a kind of really, so yeah, so I don't know, but yeah, I mean, it's great. It is. It's really fun working with Phoebe. It's like, you know, it's sort of the other, you know, when the things aren't working, it is really funny as well because, you know, there might be a kind of moment we'll be watching something and we just be like, I don't know what it is, you know, and then it might be like, but I think it should be a bit like this, and you go, well, no, actually, I think it should be a bit like this, and then like mum texts, you know what I mean? And we're in like quite a high stakes kind of situation. It's just really nice. It's just so nice, actually. It just keeps the perspective.
Yeah. Doesn't it keep you grounded, doesn't it?
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
I mean, it just sounds like it was such a wonderful experience. And I guess
Yeah.
when just imagining kind of the writing on the train, do you find that do you have a method of approach when it comes to creating composition for media? Because I mean, every writer has their different. I don't want to say tricks, but it's like almost a comfort zone. You know, what's the approach that you take before you start a creative project? And are you a composer at the piano, or on the train? Didn't really have a piano, but you know, I did that. What's
Yeah.
your approach? Yeah.
It's kind of really evolved over the years. Like I've really, as I've gotten to know myself, it's kind of, I've gotten to know what that is as well. And I think, all, you know, will, you know, we as human beings, like, will continue to kind of evolve. So I'm sure it will kind of keep changing, but it has always kind of started with the piano. It's just really interesting. Whenever I'm stuck and I'm writing on the keyboard, like in the studio, you know, the picture and stuff, as soon as I go to the piano, it's just like I can just write it and it's like no big deal, and I'm like, you know, have better ideas and stuff like that. So it does, but I basically have to, I know now that I need to be like really relaxed in order to kind of start. I To finish, I need to be like very stressed in order to get it over the line, probably. But you know, like within reason, you know, there's that tipping point of when you're stressed and then you're paralyzed. Like you can't, it's like you're stressed and stimulated and it's
Fine line.
good. Such a fine line. And I always used to think that I was really, really last minute. And then actually, like all my kind of good ideas came like, you know, right at the last minute. And there was never any point in me starting anything early. But I have recently just spent about 7 months on a film. And that was such a good process. And so I've realized that actually I can do it. And I just have to be a bit more kind of strategic. And I don't know, it makes, I don't know, the length of time and the relationship that has with your kind of internal critic, because I think I spend a lot of energy trying to kind of turn off the inner monologue that, you know, is constantly kind of throwing shade over everything that you do. So actually having time having more time does actually, it makes me feel calm, and actually I think when I feel calm, that's when I write the good stuff. I think. I don't actually. Now I'm saying that, I'm remembering all these times when actually I've written like stuff under feeling like not calm at all, and it's actually been all right.
I mean, but it's a wonderful image of actually just coming to the piano, which is your instrument, what you know so well, and
Mm,
almost forming this this bubble to just break away from the stress of whatever project you're working on, whoever's director, producer, just that in this moment it's just you, the piano, creating the music. Like,
Yeah, that's so important as well, because it's like I can you don't I can sometimes get in the way of my own, you know, music, and that is fine, but I can sort of handle that because I know how to kind of deal with myself in order to get myself sort of out the way. So I could, but these the quiet and the alone time, it can't, you know, I'm sort of even like weird about, you know, who can come into the studio sometimes, because it's like such a sacred like space of energy that you know, I had like once like years ago, there was a person who came into the studio and just like left a really weird energy, and I really had to like sage the space. And I was like, and it made me feel weird about, you know, going in there and stuff. And so I'm kind of, but I think that's, you know, you protect,
yeah.
you know, you have to protect your kind of um your sacred places that you kind of that you feel like the most safe. And that, yeah, the piano is it. The piano is like the piano is has kind of probably told a lot more people about kind of the way I'm feeling than I have. So I'm like, really, I really trust it to kind of show me the truth.
Oh, that's such an amazing
So
picture. I absolutely love that. I guess that kind of your piano style as well. I want to touch on the film Emma, which I absolutely love, and I loved the music for it. It was, I think, if I may say, wasn't what you would expect for an Austen, which I think is what made me like take it back and take it in a completely different way. Because Autumn Wilde's vision and the aesthetic and everything was just so different and so remarkable. How did you how did you get involved on that project, I guess, to start?
well, it was autumn. I got a call from I got a call asking, saying that Autumn was in town, and she just started editing, or she was just about to start editing Emma, and she wanted to have dinner. So I was like, great. I said, this sounds wonderful. Wasn't an offer at all. It was just like, come and have dinner, and let's talk about the project and see, you know, whether if there's a good chemistry, and whether, you know, it might kind of something might happen. And then we did, and we had the most amazing dinner, actually. I'll never forget it. It was so important. And but what was amazing really about that dinner is that Autumn had such a clear vision for the music. And what was so wonderful about kind of reaching the, you know, the sessions, the recording sessions, and you know, of the score, was knowing that, remembering that very first dinner, and that when she was talking about kind of Peter and the Wolf, and she was talking about you know, how she wanted the music to be really closely spotted to the picture, and almost that she wanted us to feel like there was a live orchestra kind of behind the camera that was kind of in real time, like reacting to the action. So it was kind of very sort of vibrant in that way. And she talked about kind of a Bugs Bunny sort of effect, you know, and something would happen, the music would, you know, react. And so she really, really knew at that first dinner that she wanted, in the same way that she was so clear about, you know, the colors and all the production design and the costumes and the makeup um and the sort of hair, like everything was so specific. It was, and I've never worked with anyone who had, you know, with such a specific vision, which was kind of daunting actually as well,
Yes, of
I think.
course.
But it was wonderful that when we'd actually when we were recording the music and we were talking about that dinner and just saying, oh my goodness, like, you know, we sort of did it. And yeah, it was, I think there were lots of interesting things about writing that score, and the fact she also, Autumn, really wanted every instrument to be period. And that's when you're scoring something, you kind of go, okay, you know, we're looking at kind of piano fortes and stuff like that, but then they just don't stay in tune. Like, I just had one in the studio, but it just doesn't you know, and then it's just like a mission. And when you've only got kind of three, you know, a really short amount of time to write it, you kind of go, do you think maybe we'll use a classical piano? It was okay, and it was fine.
When
But you know,
sacrifices.
you got to try. You got to try. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I was reflecting on that, and actually, that's so interesting that that was her vision from the beginning, because it
Mm.
gives across this almost silent movie era feel
Mm.
of I mean, the phrase Mickey Mousing, where the music follows
Mm.
the movements. You know, you can close your eyes, and first of all, I mean, this is absolute compliments to you, because I mean, like, you can close your eyes and you know, let the music interpret where your imagination is going. It's fantastic.
Oh, I'm
And of course,
glad.
the different, I guess, like the different styles, very, as you were saying, Peter and the Wolf, we have folk, we have opera, we have
Hmm.
score.
Hmm.
Were those your kind of in interpreting, you know, Autumn's really specific vision? How did you bring in those styles, or was she very much in agreement with that? Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, the opera was a really interesting one. It was so all the folk music Autumn had chosen before we started scoring. I mean, she was like making kind of, as we were kind of going through it, she was sort of making kind of final decisions. But we knew that we were scoring around these songs. And then she had talked to me about A Room with a View, which is one of her favorite films, and they use opera in that film as a way of sort of highlighting the kind of vanity of certain characters. And Autumn really loved this as a kind of approach to highlighting the vanity in Emma. And so so that I thought was kind of brilliant. It was really, that then started a process of thinking about, okay, so if we have quite kind of sort of highbrow traditional, you know, kind of very, very classical music in Emma's kind of area, sort of like thematically. And then for Harriet, she feels a bit more linked to the kind of folk songs. So then kind of approaching it with the same kind of instrumentation, but she's more about the fiddle and the, you know, and the flutes, and sort of making them a bit sort of distinctive in that way. Um, that's when we started kind of, you know, thinking about the themes and thinking about the different roles that the music should play, and then Knightley, you know, with the horns.
Yes.
Um, and Mr. Elton was the bassoon, and you know, it was really specific, you know, like, um, and yeah, Mr. Martin was a cor anglais, and it was like, it was really, yeah, she was, but Autumn was so, she was really across it from the very beginning. She had all these references.
Mm.
She thought about it so much, and it was an amazing roadmap, because then it was just about, okay, so we know,
Of course.
it took us a while to get the opera to sort of work, I think it's fair to say, because it was, there were quite a lot of different sort of pieces of the puzzle. You had the opera is, and then you had the sort of the rest of the score, and then you had the folk music, and then so, but we kind of, when the opera sort of then became, it was when the themes started sort of interweaving with each other, and then we got to the end for the wedding, and the opera then sort of became, it was like sort of wedding kind of choral
Yeah.
music rather than sort of that too operatic. So we kind of, you know, it was a real journey of, it was a real puzzle, but I think it was so much fun it was like a bit like, it did like melt our brains a couple of times, but it was like really, really fun, you know, to be writing all of those different things and like coming up with Italian lyrics, and oh, it's so fun.
That's a whole different challenge there.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, that had to go through a lot of kind of Italian translators before they let that anywhere near the film. With
I
me
would
just in my
not do well
studio.
with that.
No,
Duolingo would
no,
not.
no, no. Me and like
No.
Google Translate just was not going in the film. Yeah.
It was, well, it's a fantastic film, and I honestly, I love the score. I listen to it all the time. I think it's so well
So
done.
much.
I mean, I want to say kind of polar opposite. Uh, the ABC murders, and in this kind of darker, I want to say sinister tone. but also a lot of that we see and we hear more like in your personal compositions. And just, is that kind of something that you really take to, kind of the diving into the darker tones in the music?
Yeah, it really is. It's really sort of sometimes, yeah, it really, really is. And the ABC Murders is funny because that I haven't released that score or anything, but it is one of my favorite projects that I've done. And I'm so glad you mentioned it because it's like I really loved it so much writing that. And it's definitely the darker things, they are probably where I'm most sort of like, I don't know, it's I've got to be sort of, I do just really love going into those sound worlds. And so, and actually weirdly, all my theatre stuff is in that area as well. So it's like all the solo stuff, all the theatre stuff, and then the occasional bit of film, but actually, yeah, maybe two, maybe even just one film that I've done is sort of darker, but I do really love it. And I love also being able to write the kind of other stuff, the idea of kind of repeating myself gives me a lot of sort of anxiety. I don't like the idea of just only writing dark things or only writing, because I think I would stop feeling kind of challenged, or if I was just like constantly just like sitting in my nice like safe dark chair. Be like, so it's really important to kind of, and also sometimes with the other things, I think you really live with the world of the thing that you're scoring. And if I've done a lot of things that are bleaker and have required quite a lot of I don't know, almost like sort of going to a darker place, sometimes you do just want to kind of relax a little bit and
Absolutely.
just write something that is a bit more sort of on a different sort of emotional side. But the weirdest thing to me is that I'm like really allergic to comedy, so it's like I'm like, and I think that's possibly why I keep telling this to directors. I'm just saying I'm really allergic to comedy. I don't like music for comedy. um and that's like, I don't understand really, because then people keep sort of, but I'm really specific about the stuff that might have to have some sort of like, lighter element in the score, because I actually find it really hard to write. It actually takes way more out of me than the darker stuff. And so yeah, so probably maybe only a sprinkling of those.
I mean, it's completely true though, because if this is your work where you pour everything into this project, and if in a way that project pours everything into you, because you're enveloped in that world. And so I think for anyone to do, it would be interesting to meet someone who could just do dark things the entire length,
Yeah,
because it's very,
yeah, but I mean, it's more that I think yeah, I think it's because there are plenty of people that kind of do and survive. It's like they're okay and they're not, they're okay. But I think it's more that I think if I was doing that stuff, I don't know how I would grow. I don't know how I would grow.
yeah,
Like, I think, and if I do, and I know that if I do too much of one thing, I start to kind of lose a bit of love for it. And um that was there was I was doing a lot of kind of one sort of project. It was like, it was it was actually theatre. This was a few years ago, and I was doing so much theatre, and theatre is my whole soul. I love it so much. I've the whole process, and I feel so lucky to have kind of started in theatre and to be kind of doing it, and it's really important to me. But I was doing so much of it that it was starting to kind of really kind of wear me down, because it's hard. It's a sort of different kind of muscle, and it's a different sort of time, and you're away a lot, and it's kind of, I don't know. But so I realize you then realize that kind of like how, okay, so I know I can only do kind of 1 or 2 shows a year, you know, not like I was doing like 9 or something at one point. It was
Yeah.
like, that's just not, yeah. So I think a bit of a mix, a
Yes.
bit of variety, I think
Variety
is
is
good,
good.
which is
Variety is good.
variety
That
is
about your
important.
diet makes sense for the work.
Exactly. It is totally the same. It's the same principles as anything like that. It's really true. And then, and you know, sometimes the things that don't taste good, and you just don't have them again, you
Yeah.
know, and that's fine. But I think, you know, I think yeah. But I'm kind of I think now that I've done sort of, I don't know, I'm really getting to know. I'm really getting much closer to what I think, what I know I can stomach, and the things that I know I need a bit of a rest from, or you know, anything like that. So
That
sort of getting,
that's really, and that's, I think, something that we all should look for, is to find the, getting to know ourselves as we continue to grow and you continue to
mm,
learn new things about
mm.
yourself and about what works and what you're great at. And I guess I guess a follow up with that then, what would your dream project be? If it didn't have to be film, TV, it could be ballet, opera. Like if you can compose one thing next, what would it be?
Oh my gosh. Well, it's kind of, I've just started, so the on my like lit like big, like, oh my god, that wouldn't that be amazing, um but is one of them is a dance piece. I would love to do a dance piece. I've just started a kind of small one, um and I'm really excited about it. And but it's really small. It's only one dance that's small, so it's like tiny.
Right? Start somewhere.
But it's with like a beautiful dancer, and I'm such a fan of hers, and it's really exciting. And so that is like, but I think, I don't know, like, I'm writing this album at the moment, and I know that it I'm not just going to write an album. It's got to be, because if I only write one album, for instance, like with everything that I love, with theatre and atmosphere and performance and all of these things, I would feel really, kind of excited, I think, if I knew that it was an album, but it was going to be something kind of bigger. And I know that, you know, of course, that's the approach that a lot of people. I've never done an album before. I'm sure everyone who's like written an album are like, yeah. but but I'm really excited about performing something like that myself. That is great. And then I have a musical in development at the moment that I'm really excited about. Um, and I there's a poet that I really, really love. Um, and I contacted her last year. She lives in Canada, and I asked her whether I could adapt some of her work and sort of turn it into music, you know, something musical. And she thinks I'm absolutely nuts. She's like, and but I'm really, but she's amazing. And you know, working with people that, you know, I'm really kind of, I respect and I'm inspired by. So there's a range of things, but I think I don't know what the kind of the ingredients are. Probably like, if I'm collaborating, then it's, you know, who's the collaborator? Is it a poet that I'm really inspired by, or, you know, a choreographer, or, you know, is it about performance? There's so many things
Mm.
to do.
Yeah.
but you know, I'm like, just, you know, making my way sort of
Absolutely.
towards them. And yeah.
No, I mean, they sound great. I'm all in for them.
Oh, good. Thanks.
Um, so I wanted to ask. I mean, we have seen change in the film and TV industry. Sometimes it appears incredibly slow, but we have seen some of it, especially where women are being recognized for their work. The latest award seasons, which are showing that. But you know, so I'm a music grad a while ago, and it does bring me such joy and inspiration to see, you know, fantastic TV shows and films which are scored by, you know, incredibly talented women like yourself. And I just, you know, thank you. So I just wanted to ask, I guess, what are your thoughts in to the changes that could and should still be made in the industry? And I guess if you have any advice for the next generation of women in this industry that you'd like to share.
Yeah, I mean, gosh, it's such a big one, because I really remember. Well, it's a weird one actually, because I remember when I was kind of at school, I remember in terms of like film composers, only really knowing about Rachel Portman,
Yes.
and then, you know, and then learning about Jocelyn Pook, you know, and then kind of like this making other sort of discoveries and being like, you know, then Anne Dudley, but really there were only about 5 of them then. And I was, but it never, I was young, I suppose, so I didn't really understand that, you know, that was a big, you know, even though I was only being taught about kind of, you know, Beethoven and the guys, and I think that probably is where it probably needs to start, that kind of change. But that is changing, I think, in curriculums and things like that, you know, Barbara Strozzi and you know, Fanny Mendelssohn, and we might have to cut that bit out because it's Fanny Mendelssohn who composed.
It's fine, we can work with it.
Okay, yeah. But yeah, it's a, you know what is funny is that when I got to university, I started for some reason, all the composers that I was like really drawn to, and I honestly, I have no idea whether it's because they're women and am a woman, or because of I just like their music. I really have no idea. I know that it was like 90% their music, but maybe something else about but you know, it was like Judith Weir, Thea Musgrave, Tansy Davis, you know, still is these, you know, these women to me as well. And then I started to, then I came across the Camberwell Composers Collective, and of course that was Anna Meredith and Emily Hall, and you know, and then it started to kind of all these like female composers that I was just listening to them all the time, but I wasn't like, I'm listening to female composers. I was just like, I'm listening to some just like wicked music, like really cool contemporary classical music. And so I think in a funny sort of way, they were my like little, like they were the torch that I was just following. And you know, and I think, but definitely, you know, if I wouldn't say that if you're a female composer, you need to have a female composer who is your like torch person. You know, you can have anyone that you admire, and it's just really about the music. That's the amazing thing about music, is that it is kind of essentially genderless. So, but to be a woman in the music industry is 100% like a thing. Less so now, and I didn't, you know, I haven't, I've experienced more in terms of like hearing the way other people talk around some musicians, you know, about 10 years ago probably, that was like, that I remember making me feel uncomfortable. And then oh my god, I remember like being, I think I was about 26, and there was someone in, I was working part-time for an orchestra, and there was one of the men that gives, you know, money to the orchestra, sort of, I remember him kind of, I don't know, sort of suggesting sort of like to help me, but then sort of saying, you know, if you haven't made it by the time you're 30. And then I was like, and then, you know, I remember like my first agent sort of suggesting, you know, part of the kind of meeting was to talk about what I should wear, you know, so it really, like, you know, it can kind of grind you down.
Yeah.
However, it actually, you just kind of go, well, you know, actually that's got like nothing to do with me. That is just like all you, and that is like your stuff.
Yes.
And it quickly can become quite kind of background noise, which it really, really did. It sort of, when I remember those things, I get kind of quite sort of, I guess, angry about them. But also, you know, that was just literally like the world we were living in. And also it didn't affect, you know, if anything, it made me want to do it kind of more. But I've never, so my advice to any like sort of young composers, for the women, the young composers, I think just like ignore all the crap, any like stuff that you hear. I don't think there's that much actually happening anymore. I think people are so good, and it's really, and it's made like there's been such a corner that's returned, and that's really amazing and feels really good. And there are so many more that are visible, like, you know, we're seeing them, you know, it's still in Hollywood and all of those places, there's, you know, it's got a bit of a way to go, but like it is changing and things do just take time. And I think to be seen is a really important place to sort of begin, and I really feel like that's happening so positively. And so yeah, so, and then to the sort of general kind of young composers, I mean, I don't really know. I think you just got to kind of keep going, you know. It's like, it just was my whole, you know, it was everything. And I did get quite lucky, I think, but maybe, but then, because the way I met a film composer, the way I started, when I started assisting him, but it was because I'd started a scheme with an orchestra to help young composers have their work performed, and my stuff as well, because this orchestra, they weren't performing stuff. So it was when I was doing my postgrad, and I was just like looking for a part-time job. So I said, can I come and start this scheme and run this scheme and have some kind of music performed? And they were like, yeah, sure, great. They were amazing. And then as part of that, I invited experienced composers to come and talk to the students, and that was Graham Fitkin and George Fenton and Cheryl Francis Hode and Ruth Wall and a few others. And then I asked George whether I could be his assistant. So I feel like you know, you can get lucky, but I also feel like you just got to go out and just like just do stuff and make it happen. And, you know.
Oh, that's brilliant. I remember the going out and making it happen. Absolutely. I remember in university being told the worst that can happen is they say no. And I was like, yeah. Oh,
yeah, it's so liberating when you realize that. And you're like, oh well, yeah, fine, if that's all.
That's the penny drops. Oh yeah. I think that's absolutely brilliant. And yes, like, be courageous and like go out there. And yeah, as you were saying, kind of the music is what counts. Your music is
100%. Yeah, and make stuff with other people. Like the whole way I kind of got going, I think, was just by starting to, you know, write bits of music with other people, for other people. And then I used to do a thing, actually, this I would suggest, because this actually did help me through kind of the, you know, like the no times, where it's so like when I was offered a job, and I must have started doing this when I was like, I don't know, in my early 20s. I took a photo of my face, my like really elated face, so that when I was given the like 15 no's that were going to follow that, like, I would just look at the photo of my face and be like, look, they believe in you, you know. And so, and then that was actually, that really helped, because it can get a bit rough, but I don't know. To be honest, I don't know whether I was in some sort of part of like writing music, because I do feel you're in some sort of permanent state of a kind of daydream. Or in order to write, I feel like I need to go into a bit of a trance. So maybe that has been also, by extension, just, you know, I've just always been looking down that end of the telescope, you know, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. And that's genius, I think, to to remind yourself of the encouragement, because so often we can, like, the no's
Mm.
are heavier weighted than the yeses. It's just kind of a fact
Yeah.
of life, that you feel that burden more than the joy that you feel when you get a yes. And so to remind you of that picture of your face, I think is great.
Yeah, totally, totally. It's so important. It's like digging around for the worst review that you can possibly find, and then, and then you're like, yeah, yeah. About the nice stuff, you're like, ah, who cares?
Exactly. What was that nice? No, no idea. I can't remember.
Yeah, I'm not interested. Tell me, I'm terrible. So I don't know. Yeah, looking for those things, but then also, I actually don't. I actually now, I'm not that. But the other weird thing about kind of getting older, I suppose, and like becoming just like working, is that the the kind of important things change. Like reviews and stuff used to be really important to me, kind of, when I was getting going. Of course, and they are important, sort of. But actually, I don't really think. I don't know. I'm not that interested in them.
Mm.
Stuff like that. I think the focus is so on the collaborators, on making good, interesting, sort of challenging to yourself or to an audience, kind of work, and um
It's your
the
experience.
rest of it. Yeah, totally, totally. um yeah, yeah.
Fantastic. I mean, I honestly as well, I feel like I could talk for hours, but I have one more question, and it is, I guess, just a more of a fun one. But this last year, 18 months, has been awful in so many different ways. But on a lighter side, what we've seen as a nation is that we are watching far more than we probably ever have been before.
Mm.
And I just wanted to ask, did you have a go-to TV show or standout film from this last 18 months, 1 year COVID period of time?
I definitely have. The the i i actually watched LA Confidential, I kind of rewatched things that I really wanted to, that I hadn't like watched in ages, and really kind of, and that those kind of old sort of movies really, I mean, it's not that old, but it's kind of, it's kind of vintage, I guess. But I think, would you say? I mean,
I'd say,
I
yeah.
think it is kind of, yeah, they're all quite, anyway, whatever. But going going back into those and actually rediscovering old loves, like I watched a load of David Lynch,
Mm.
because he was my like first kind of love, I think, in terms of film. So I went back into that, and yeah, I'm not even really sure. I My sister and I were locked down together. We played quite a lot of PlayStation.
Yes.
So
What games?
the only game that we could, because I was like, I don't want to play anything violent. I was like, can't handle it. Like, this is a hard year.
Yeah, yeah.
No violence. So she was really amazing. So she looked at kind of like non-violent PlayStation games, and we found this like really beautiful one called Unravel, and it's called Unravel 2 actually, and these two woolen characters. It's such beautiful. It's made by these Scandinavian brothers. It's so beautiful. Anyway, it's these two woolen characters that are tied together by a piece of wool, and they go on these adventures, and they have to help each other. It's really adorable. So anyway, we played quite a lot of that. Um, that was actually a real highlight last year.
Honestly, that sounds
Discovering Unravel.
dreamy. I mean, Scandinavians, they
Yeah.
got it right.
Yeah, it's so beautiful. It's really calming. I really recommend it actually, even if you dislike it. It's really good.
Oh, that's fantastic. I think that's the best way to relax and think of better things during the year that we.
Yeah, although I think it is, except I did like, there were like after playing, because you get locked into it and you play, and then I play it for like, we played it for like 2 hours, and honestly I felt like I'd been to a festival. I was like, I came out of it just like huge eyes, and was like, I don't think I can do this for very much longer.
Of course, like I forget that obviously like playing, it takes, my brother reminds me of this, it takes so much concentration, and like
Yeah,
when
you lose time.
it's different to watching
Totally.
something. you know?
100%. It's kind of anyway, but yeah, that was I really recommend it.
That's great. I think that's a great shout. Oh, well, Isabel, it's been an absolute joy. It's been a privilege and a pleasure to chat with you today. And I so appreciate you
Thank you
joining us.
so much. Thanks for having me. It's been so nice.